About 733 miles north of the luxurious resort islands of Fiji lies another chain of islands a little less well known. This chain of islands is called Tuvalu. However, unless we do something about it, these islands will soon not be called anything at all. You see, the islands of Tuvalu have slowly been disappearing into the oceans over the course of the past few decades. Leslie Allen, writer for the Smithsonian News, states, "Rising seas and deadly storms have repeatedly started to swamp the islands, and fears are growing that Tuvalu will be uninhabitable or may vanish entirely within a few decades." These raging storms and rising tides are primarily due to changes in the climate of the Earth, which our world has only been experiencing since the beginning of the Industrial Age. This is a prime case against the devastating effects of global warming. However, these effects and dangers are more than just tragedies that we hear of from overseas nations. They are much closer to home. You and I can also experience many of these changes due to global warming. Picture for yourself a bright blue mid-morning sky. Imagine thinking about the deep colors that you see in the morning. Or also, you could think about any time that you've gazed at the stars and contemplated the universe. Have you ever had moments like these? I have. And they've been very important moments for me. They've made me think a lot about who I am and where I've come from. Can you imagine a world without these moments that can only be provoked by the beautiful nature around us? This is likely to be the fate of our planet if we don't start doing something about global warming and climate change. Therefore, having researched this topic, I will now try to help you see why global warming is much more than just a myth, but rather a real problem that needs to be addressed. But before we can understand why global warming is so important, we have to understand what is meant by this phrase. According to Merriam-Webster, global warming is an increase in the Earth's atmospheric and oceanic temperatures, widely predicted to occur due to an increase in the greenhouse effect resulting especially from pollution. In simpler words, global warming is the temperature of the Earth that has been rising both in the atmosphere and in the oceans due to pollution, which causes an increase in greenhouse gases. Now, greenhouse gases are specific molecules whose function is warmth retention for the surface of the Earth. This process of molecules retaining warmth on the Earth is called the greenhouse effect, and it is caused mostly by carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, and other carbon-based molecules. These molecules allow the ultraviolet radiation from the sun to pass through the atmosphere kind of like a pane of glass, but then retain some of that warmth in once it is refracted and spread back out into space. This is a natural process that has been occurring for centuries, eons, and it has kept the surface of our Earth at a temperature that is able to sustain life. However, due to a recent increase in the emission of these greenhouse gases, the Earth is currently experiencing an imbalance in the levels of these molecules in the atmosphere. So now that we know a little bit more, what does global warming mean, this imbalance of greenhouse gases, now we can begin to discuss what is it that causes global warming? What makes it happen? Well, basically, it all starts with greenhouse gas emissions. This can be anything from your car exhaust to burning garbage to leaving the lights on when they're not needed. All of these things, all of these activities generate the gases that are released into the atmosphere that trap in the heat. Another reason that global warming is happening at such an alarming rate is something called a chlorofluorocarbon. Basically, this is a molecule that McGraw-Hill explains is diffused into the stratosphere where it releases chlorine and fluorine atoms, which destroy the ozone shield that protects the Earth from ultraviolet radiation. This is actually evidenced by NASA. This photo taken of the Earth shows where ozone is present, specifically the green regions, and where ozone is not present, which is the blue region. Basically, what happens is this chemical called ozone protects us from the UV radiation of the sun. But due to an increase in chlorofluorocarbons, or CFCs for short, these molecules are released into the stratosphere where it destroys the ozone and thus allows more heat to enter into the Earth, which creates an environment where the ice caps on the poles of the Earth are beginning to melt and sea levels are beginning to rise. Not by very much, but by enough to cause some damage to Tuvalu. So now that we understand what is global warming and what is it that makes global warming happen, we can begin to discuss what can we personally do about it. CFCs, when it comes to CFCs, there's not really much that we can do. You see, these were chemicals that were used in industrial products around the 1980s. But since then, the United States Environmental Protection Agency has worked to ban and outlaw the production of these chemicals. However, even though there's not much we can do about this because they've already been banned, there is still hope for the ozone layer. According to multiple scientists at the Goddard Space Flight Center at NASA, CFCs have lifetimes from 50 to 100 years, so they linger in the atmosphere for a very long time. As far as the ozone hole being gone, we're looking at 2060 or 2080. So despite the fact that CFCs will hang around for a long time, we've already done all that we can when it comes to destroying the ozone layer and repairing that damage. However, we do have a lot of control over the greenhouse gas emissions. There are multiple things that we can personally do. For example, the Environmental Protection Agency suggests that we do things such as choose to purchase environmentally friendly cars. By choosing cars that are more fuel efficient, we use less gas. And by choosing cars that have lower emissions, we retain that carbon dioxide and we stop it from getting out into the atmosphere. Another thing we can do is remember the 3 R's: reduce, reuse, and recycle. These simple steps can actually help to reduce the raw materials that are needed to produce more of the same product, and they help us to make sure that more carbon dioxide, methane, nitrous oxide, make sure that those things don't get out into the atmosphere. And another thing that they suggest we do is spread the word. Tell your friends about the importance of understanding what global warming is. Remember why it's important yourself, and tell people about things that you're doing to help with global warming. These and more suggestions can actually be found on epa.gov. Now, there might actually yet be hope for little Tuvalu. There's a lot being done to repair the damages that have already been made. The ozone hole is closing, and a lot more people are starting to actually talk about global warming. I have explained in this conversation, I've explained what is global warming. We have answered that question. We've also answered the question of what causes global warming to happen. And we've also discussed what can we personally do as individuals to help reduce global warming. Now, the only question that's left to answer is for each and every one of you: what can I do today to fight global warming? Thank you.